Hey, everybody. One of the prevailing questions, I'm just going to jump right into it. Again, try and save everybody a little bit of time. Surprise, surprise, I tend to be a little bit verbose, and I apologize for that. But one of the prevailing questions that came out of our last video workshop was what exactly is a subclaim and how does it work? It's actually a really good question because one of the things that usually, if we're doing the AI in the field essay, for writing a critical analysis, one of the things that you usually do first, I mean, outside of research is really where I go first. But beyond that, one of the first things I do in terms of developing my ideas for my paper is to start writing subclaims or developing subclaims. And you'll see why in just a second. Once I have those subclaims or a rough idea of what my subclaims are going to be, it'll give me a better sense of what my argument, meaning what my central claim will be. So for this video, I'm going to focus specifically on answering this question about what are subclaims, how do they work, how do we write them, what purpose do they serve in our essay analysis if we're doing that for our N2 project. This will be useful for you even if you're doing an individual project because you're going to be doing subclaims for our third essay. Our third project will be a critical analysis essay, so keep that in mind. Lastly, keep in mind that I have posted, I mean, as of a week ago or so, I posted worksheets on all of these structures: introductions and conclusions, central claims, subclaims, analysis organization or analysis paragraphs. So you can find typed out worksheets that explain what I'm going to explain here. There, it won't go as in depth, but it will give you an idea of what a subclaim is. But this video should hopefully really make it clear. At least that's the goal. So let me go to sharing my screen. And it's loading, so give it just a second. Computer is not the fastest thing in the world, so I think we're good to go. It probably will come as no surprise now that you've worked with me for a while that I attribute all my pedagogical knowledge to one thing, and that is Mad Libs. Shouldn't be surprising to you at all. I loved Mad Libs as a kid, and I'm partially joking here, but this is going to serve a purpose here. I'm not wasting your time, I hope. But Mad Libs, the game, I think helps us think about, believe it or not, it helps us think about the kind of structure that subclaims are, as opposed to something like a formula. Because as you will see on the subclaim worksheet, and as you'll see in this video, I'm going to be talking about subclaims in almost a kind of formulaic manner, right? It's this that essentially a subclaim is a cause-effect consequence structure. In many ways, say the formula for the circumference of a circle is also a kind of formula or cause and effect structure, but we'll see how they differ. So obviously on the right with a formulaic structure like a mathematical formula, like here looking at the formulas for both finding the diameter of a circle, but also I was focusing in on the circumference of a circle, right? The formula for that is the circumference equals pi times the diameter, right? Now, in terms of that, right, I have a very precise answer, right? We should all end up using this formula. We should all end up with the same answer. In this case, since the diameter is 16 centimeters, we should all end up with well, on the circle on the right. I was just looking how the two circles are different. Sorry. We should all end up with a circle on the right. We should all end up with a 16 centimeter diameter and therefore end up with a circumference of the circle of 50.24 centimeters. On the left with Mad Libs, it's a bit of a different process. There is still a formulaic process in some sense, right? People who are playing Mad Libs, let's say you and I are going to go we're playing Mad Libs, right? So we each, before we even get to the actual fill in the blank sheet, we're given a sheet just to fill out of the different words that we can think of that we want to use. So, adjectives, nouns, plural nouns, verb ending in ing, food, plural, adverb, so on and so forth, right? So before we even see the context of what's going on, right, we make this list from our own imagination, obviously, of these adjectives, nouns, and other words. And then, of course, once I have my list, I then fill in the blank, and I get this very kind of distinct or unique result. If you go to some drab place like Yellowstone National Glass, you must know how to deal with the wild animals such as bears and wolves and trumpets. Okay. Now, the difference that I'm talking about between these two formulas, if you will, or these two structures, is the difference of something that is heuristic versus something that is formulaic. Now, what I mean by heuristic is important because this is sort of essential to the way I think we can understand teaching writing and learning writing and writing structures. And to my mind, what is the most effective or profound way to teach writing structures, or what kind of structures we can teach written writing, right? With a heuristic structure, you're looking for, they're generative of variance, right? They're generative of getting different ideas, different interpretations, different perspectives, different point of views, right? As opposed to a formulaic structure, which is all trying to get the same answer, right? One answer. Maybe this is why I leaned the direction I did in education. Though I love mathematicians, I'm not trying to throw shade or diss mathematicians at all. Please don't think that. But you sort of get my point here. Writing structures, the way that we're going to talk about them, central claims, subclaims, even introductions, but really central claims and subclaims, claim statements, and analysis, those structures at their best, in my opinion, should be heuristic, right? They should lead us to multiple kinds of interpretations, right? As opposed to being formulaic, where they all lead us to the same interpretation, right? So, for example, with Mad Libs, right, or let's stay with the formulaic, right, I could try to propose all kinds of other answers, and trust me, I did, and I did not do well in math for whatever reason. I really enjoy it, appreciate it now, but back in the days, it was X, X, X. Even if we're even slightly off, we are wrong, right? I need to go back and try again. Of course, in the case of writing critical analysis, there isn't really any right and wrong. It's more about a diversity of interpretations. So you fill out the Mad Libs word sheet, and you might have something completely different. If you go to some silly place like Yellowstone National Piglet, you must know how to deal with the wild animals such as bears and wolves and pillows. And a third person might come out with, if you go some waxy place like Yellowstone National Shadow, you must know how to deal with wild animals such as bears and wolves and clocks. For me as a child, this was endlessly entertaining, particularly when I would, go up to different people in my family and ask them for an adjective, a noun, a plural noun, or whatever it might be. And so I could create all these different texts. So this notion of heuristics, let's sort of apply this a little bit more concretely, though I still perhaps want to keep it a little bit strange. Let's say we were all going to ride, or you and I are going to go ride on a Ferris wheel, right? Now, in terms of a formulaic approach to that Ferris wheel, in the sort of frame of my argument here, right? We would figure out, we know the formula that find the circumference of this formula of this Ferris wheel, right? It's pi times the diameter. We figure out that the diameter is 394 feet. So that means the exact circumference of this Ferris wheel in Dubai is 1,237.79 feet. Okay, fine, great, useful for sure. But we're talking about heuristics. We're talking about generating ideas and variance, right? So that's what subclaims and analysis is all about. A lot of you commented upon this difference between what I drew a difference or distinguish between support paragraphs as those kinds of paragraphs that simply provide evidence in support of an idea, and analysis paragraphs that actually interpret and analyze evidence or examples towards an idea, right? And those are two very different things, right? So, For example, if I'm just taking a familiar position in a debate, say I'm pro legalization of marijuana, then I'm going to bring in all the examples that are sort of very familiar, usually to most of us, right, who've heard these arguments, or vice versa, right? With an argumentative analysis, I'm not only presenting my own point of view and perspective with my argument, and that's with central claim, but I'm also developing specific analytical points, right? I'm trying to interpret the things I'm analyzing rather than just present them as evidence or examples. So with subclaims, you'll see there's three parts to a subclaim. Well, you're seeing right now. Three aspects. We want each of our analysis paragraphs to start with a subclaim, and each of those subclaims should be different. Each subclaim itself should have three different parts: an element, an effect, and consequence. So these three things are connected, like I said, in a cause, effect, and consequence structure. One leads to one leads, the element leads to an effect, which also then leads to a sense of consequence. So in this case, we're talking about the Ferris wheel, right? The Ferris wheel. Let's say you and I are going to go on this Ferris wheel, right? So the object of the analysis, in this case, the element that we're analyzing, is the Ferris wheel itself. And you love going on Ferris wheels, right? So for you, the effect of the Ferris wheel is that it's exhilarating, it's exciting, it's thrilling. And it leads you find that after going on the Ferris wheel for the rest of the day, you kind of have this happy outlook, right? It's just a wonderful thing. It makes you feel good about yourself. It makes you feel good about the world, so on and so forth. In this case, the effect, the way we want to understand it, is that is an immediate and experiential effect, right? That the element has. So in your case, upon you that loves Ferris wheels, it's exhilarating. The consequence is the outcome or the result. What does this lead to, right? In terms of, or the longer term, not just the immediate, but what is this? What is the outcome? What is the result of this, right? Now, let's say I ride the Ferris wheel with you. I know that I don't like Ferris wheels, not into it, but you're my friend and I want to join you. I know they make you happy, so I'm going to go anyways. But my interpretation of the Ferris wheel is going to be quite different, right? For me, it's going to be terrifying and fearful, right? Scary. That's the immediate experience I have of it. The outcome and result is that it kind of just leaves me discouraged. I feel crummy for the rest of the day. I feel demotivated. I feel discouraged. So the thing that also to keep in mind here with subclaims, first of all, is that yes, I have both a sense of effect and consequence that I want to talk about. Those are the interpretive parts of the subclaim. But I'm also operating beneath, right, subclaims or subclaims beneath a central claim. And that central claim is going to provide a sense of an issue. So here, the issue that we're kind of dealing with is sort of psychological impact, I guess, of Ferris wheels, let's say. I don't know if a paper's ever been written about a Ferris wheel. I'm sure somebody has, but the issue I'm using here is the psychological impact. The position's going to be different, right? If you were writing the paper, or your position on the ride is that it's great, it's wonderful, it's enjoyable. For me, it's damaging, right? It's not good, it's negative, right? And therefore, the impact for me is disempowering. So on a general level, right, if I was to develop a central claim, and you'll see these phrases position and impact in the central claim statement, that's going to be key to sort of giving my reader a sense of what is my approach to this thing that I'm analyzing. In your case, if you love Ferris wheels, you want to talk about how they're not damaging, instead, how they're really inspiring or motivating or whatever they are. And the impact is this kind of sense of being, this increase in happiness. So we're obviously not analyzing Ferris wheels. We are analyzing artificial intelligence. If we're writing the analytical essay, we're writing about how artificial intelligence is impacting a certain field of interest. So let's say I'm really interested in artificial intelligence in terms of elementary education, right? So in this case, my issue is going to be educational. The position I'm taking is that I feel like AI overall in elementary educational overall, sure, there's some problems and some concerns, but I feel overall that it's really productive. And then why do what is the productive impact it's happening? I think it leads to more engaged and motivated learners. Okay, so that's my sense overall. I'm going to set that aside because that's going to be my central claim, but I'm not going to worry about writing that yet. I want to start analyzing and I want to start developing my subclaims. So I start, now that I have my focus of AI in elementary education, I need to focus in on my elements in each of my subclaims are going to be specific aspects of AI in elementary education. It's not just going to be AI every time. It's going to be something specific about AI in elementary education. So let's say I do some research and I learned that one of the AI tools in elementary education is called an adaptive learning management system. And as Ankush Sharma writes, it is a system designed to tailor the resources, assignments, activities, tasks, etc., to suit the individual needs of each student. ALMS are also called adaptive learning environments and are built based on individual learner models. Prodigy Math is a perfect example of ALMS technology that teaches math, easily to kids. So great, here I've done a little research. Like I said, I usually start with research. I've figured out something I want to analyze, a specific element of AI in elementary education. So I'm going to bring that in. That's my element for one of my first subclaims, or my first subclaim, ALMS, okay? Now, what do I feel is the specific effect of ALMS upon elementary school learners? Well, I think it produces this kind of effective pacing, right? You get this, it adjusts, again, through my research, I realize it adjusts to your own pacing and style of learning, right? If it senses that things are going too fast, it'll slow down. If it senses that you're kind of ahead of the game, you kind of know all the answers, if you will, it'll sort of pick things up. And to me, the outcome and result of this is that it actually maintains student interest, right? So, you're not sitting there like, oh, I know all this already. It's going to pick up the pace if you know all this already. Or if you're sitting there like, whoa, I'm really lost and I'm getting really discouraged, it avoids that. And that's kind of the way I interpret it. So it has effective pacing, and this leads to the outcome of that is it maintains student interest and avoids discouragement. Now, let's say that I do some more research and I figure out that this ALMS is built of all kinds of different parts and things. It has algorithms for individualization, data for analytics of behaviors and performance, real-time feedback, differentiated pathways and sequences. I mean, in some sense, I have 4 different elements that I could talk about just in terms of ALMS. If I wanted to, I could switch the focus of my paper from ALMS in elementary education. But for the purposes here, when I do more research, I might realize, you know what, I can be more specific with the element. So here I'm going to talk about ALMS algorithms, how they have this immediate impact of effective pacing. And then I'm going to show that that leads to this maintaining student interest and avoiding discouragement. Then I might have a separate subclaim, meaning a separate analysis paragraph, where I'm focusing in on the real-time feedback of the ALMS. What is that? What is the effect of that? I would want it to be different than my previous subclaim. What is the consequence of that? I would want that to be different as well. So here you can see I'm getting that variance, not only in terms of my own individual interpretations of these different elements, right? So if somebody else was to interpret ALMS algorithms, they might come up with the same effect and consequence, but they might not. Just like they might come up with the same adjective in Mad Libs, they might not, right? It's going to be based on what their position is and what they see as the impact and so on and so forth. So the variance is present. So we can all write the same paper about the same thing. People have written thousands of books about William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. It's obviously because there's not just one right interpretation of Romeo and Juliet. There's a myriad, and we shift contexts and issues and all those different lenses that we can use to understand Romeo and Juliet, or interpret it, not understand it, interpret it and think about it and get us to teach us different things. So that's really the heuristic aspect of subclaims, is they create a more analytical process. So how do I put this together? Well, like I said, if you thought I was going to let you go without bringing back Mad Libs, well, then you're mad. But like I said, it's a cause, effect, consequence structure, or element, effect, consequence structure. So I can just put that in, right? I can then write the subclaim. So the first sentence of one of my analysis paragraphs might be ALMS algorithms provide for effective pacing that allows elementary school learners to maintain interest and avoid discouragement, right? Now, I might develop that further. That's really a good rough draft, workshop draft subclaim. Maybe even my workshop drafts, I only have the element and the effect or whatever it might be. But notice that what's happening here is that I get a nice sense of focus, ALMS algorithms. I have 2 layers of interpretation in terms of effect and consequence. And that is asking more of me as a writer and as a thinker than just sort of providing evidence and examples, right? So maybe in a final draft, right, I develop this even more and my subclaim comes out like this. AI-based ALMS algorithms provide effective and individualized pacing. There's the element and effect that does what? What's the consequence of that? That allows elementary school learners to maintain interest and avoid the discouragement that can disconnect them from their learning. So there I have this more fully developed subclaim, and now I have a lot to write about in that analysis paragraph. I'm going to want to bring in detailed examples and evidence of ALMS algorithms, how they work, detailed description of how they lead to this effective pacing, right? How it creates that, and then how this ultimately leads to this idea of maintaining interest and avoiding discouragement, as well as avoiding this disconnection. So that's going to take me at least 4, 5, 6, maybe 8, 10 sentences to write, meaning because I have all that interpretive work to do, not to mention bring in all those detailed evidence and examples related to how ALMS algorithms work, what they are, what they do, how they create this pacing, and how that pacing then leads to this consequence. So that's subclaims in a nutshell. Like I said, I might even update the subclaims worksheet, but for now, that hopefully answers, so many questions that came up in relation to subclaims. In the meantime, we'll be back. I'll be back next week. There's no need to respond to this with any kind of comment or question. It's really just here as a resource to help us understand what subclaims do. But of course, if you do have questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out via email or a Q&A discussion board. And good luck with those workshop drafts. Take care.